Good evening, it's Friday the 25th of April and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Papal funeral. Thousands gather to mourn as the pontiff lies in state inside St. Peter's Basilica. Russia strikes. Trump urges Putin stop after a deadly missile attack hit central Kyiv. New study. Bonobo chatter shows human-like language traits, surprising scientists.
Colombo. This is World News Tonight with Yasiru Bitana.
Good evening once again. Thousands of mourners line up at St. Peter's Basilica as Pope Francis lies in state, with the Vatican extending viewing hours to accommodate the overwhelming turnout ahead of his funeral tomorrow.
They came in the thousands, the faithful, turning out to witness the solemn procession. On Wednesday, the body of Pope Francis was carried from his residence within the walls of the Vatican City to St. Peter's Basilica. Cardinals in red hats, bishops, candle-carrying friars, and helmeted Swiss guards accompanied Francis's open coffin as a choir chanted prayers and a bell gently tolled. It is here, inside the world's largest church, that the late Pope's body will lie in state for 3 days. The first faithful were then able to enter and see for the last time the man who led the Catholic world for 12 years. Outside, long lines of mourners wait their turns, sharing their memories and emotions. The final pilgrim will file past the Pope's coffin on Friday evening before he is prepared for his funeral on Saturday morning. Tens of thousands are expected to pay their last respects to the late pontiff inside St. Peter's.
President Donald Trump signals a potential reduction in tariffs on Chinese goods, indicating a shift towards a more conciliatory approach in the ongoing trade negotiations with Beijing.
A hint at a U-turn by US President Donald Trump on his trade war with China, with a substantial lowering of tariffs on the world's second largest economy. Beijing said the door was wide open for trade talks with Washington.
We do not wish to fight, but we are also not afraid of fighting. If the United States really wants to solve the problem through dialogue and negotiation, it should stop threatening and blackmailing and speak with China on the basis of equality, respect, and mutual benefit.
Trump's shift in tone comes after weeks of tit-for-tat retaliation that pushed U.S. tariffs on China beyond a staggering 145% and a reciprocal 125% Chinese tax on U.S. products. The U.S. president now says that percentage will come down, but said Washington will set the terms if Beijing does not agree to a deal.
Ultimately, they have to make a deal because otherwise they're not going to be able to deal in the United States. And we want them involved. 145% is very high, and it won't be that high. It's not going to be that high. It got up to there. We were talking about fentanyl where, various elements built it up to 145. No, it won't be anywhere near that high.
The wave of tariffs have sent shockwaves through global markets and stoked recession fears, but Trump has defended his move as an effort to encourage factories and jobs to return to the United States. Both the U.S. Federal Reserve and the IMF have, however, warned that a prolonged trade war will only lead to a harmful slowdown in global growth and hurt consumers around the world, including Americans.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi pledges to relentlessly pursue those responsible for the recent deadly attack in Kashmir, vowing to bring the perpetrators to justice regardless of their location.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi vowed on Thursday to hunt down those behind the deadly militant attack in Kashmir.
We will pursue them to the ends of the earth. India's spirit will never be broken by terrorism.
Gunmen shot and killed 26 men at a tourist destination in the region, and police have identified 2 of the perpetrators as Pakistani. It marked the worst attack on civilians in the country in nearly 2 decades. Modi's comments are bound to further inflame relations between the two nuclear-armed countries.
Recognizing
Diplomacy was already weak before India downgraded ties with Pakistan late on Wednesday, closing the only land border crossing between the neighbours and suspending a 6-decade-old water treaty, which Pakistan's energy minister has branded as a, quote, cowardly, illegal move. Meanwhile, in New Delhi, thousands protested outside the Pakistan embassy, demanding action over the attack, while victims' families gathered to pay their respects to their loved ones. Hindu-majority India and Muslim Pakistan control separate parts of Kashmir and both claim it in full. Militant violence has afflicted the region since an anti-Indian insurgency began in 1989. Modi has called for a meeting to brief all parties on the government's response to the attack. And in Pakistan, the foreign minister said the government was set to hold a meeting about their country's response.
Former South Korean President Moon Jae-in is indicted on bribery charges related to the allegations of a budget airline providing his son-in-law with a lucrative no-show job during Moon's tenure.
Former South Korean President Moon Jae-in has been charged with bribery. That's according to a prosecution office spokesperson on Thursday, who says it's a case involving Moon's former son-in-law having a job at a Thai airline. Prosecutors allege former lawmaker Lee Sang-jik helped arrange the job at a Thai-based corporation that Lee controlled in 2018 to 2020. In return, Lee allegedly secured a top government position, head of South Korea's Small Business and Startup Agency. Lee has been charged with bribery and breach of trust. Prosecutors had been investigating whether Moon's former son-in-law getting hired, along with the salary and living expenses he received, amounted to an improper deal. They allege the job's salary of around $180,000 was irregular and constituted a bribe to the then president. Moon, now 72, served as president from 2017 to 2022. He was succeeded by conservative leader Yoon Suk-yeol, who was recently impeached and removed from office after a controversial declaration of martial law.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news right after this. Welcome back. President Donald Trump urges Russian President Vladimir Putin to cease military actions following a deadly missile strike on Kyiv, marking a rare public admonition amid escalating tensions.
Rescue workers found a man alive in the rubble in Kyiv after Russia hit the Ukrainian capital overnight. At least 12 people were killed in the missile and drone strikes, and at least 90 were wounded in the biggest attack there this year. Anxious friends and relatives of those missing stood near destroyed buildings hoping for good news. The violence led to a rare rebuke from U.S. President Donald Trump, who told Russian President Vladimir Putin on Truth Social, quote, "Vladimir, stop." Trump was asked about his message to Putin during a meeting with Norway's Prime Minister in the Oval Office.
What is your level of frustration with President Putin?
I didn't like last night. I wasn't happy with it. And we're in the midst of talking peace, and missiles were fired. And I was not happy with it. That's what I meant.
Why are you not putting more pressure on Russia? I know a lot of Europeans.
Putting a lot of pressure. You don't know what pressure I'm putting on Russia. They're dealing. You have no idea what pressure I'm putting on Russia. We're putting a lot of pressure.
Can you maybe tell us that?
We're putting a lot of pressure on Russia, and Russia knows that, and some people that are close to it know, or he wouldn't be talking right now.
What concessions has Russia offered up thus far to get to the point where you're closer to peace?
Stopping the war, taking the whole country. Pretty big concession.
Trump said he still believed both sides wanted to make a deal to end the war begun by Russia in 2022. But the White House has also threatened to abandon its efforts at peace talks if no progress is made soon. On Wednesday, Trump slammed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky over a comment in which Zelensky repeated that Kyiv would not recognize Russia's occupation of Crimea. Zelensky, who cut short his trip to South Africa after the Russian attack, said he did not see signs Washington was putting strong pressure on Russia. Ukraine's foreign minister said on X that the brutal strike showed that Russia, not Ukraine, was the obstacle to peace, a viewpoint shared by EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas during her visit to Moldova. Talks did take place between the U.S., Ukrainian, and European officials in London this week, and Zelensky said on Thursday that the meeting with a U.S. representative had not been easy, but that it had been constructive. A U.S. official said Trump's special envoy is expected to meet Putin on Friday for more talks.
The European Commission announces plans to unveil a comprehensive roadmap in May, detailing steps to eliminate all imports of Russian fossil fuels by 2027, aiming to enhance energy security.
The European Union is set to present a comprehensive roadmap in May specifying its strategy to eliminate all imports of Russian fossil fuels by 2027. The initiative announced by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on Thursday is a response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 and aims to bolster the EU's energy independence. The EU has made significant progress in reducing Russian gas imports from 45% in 2021 to the current 18%, increasing LNG imports from the United States and gas supplies from Norway to compensate. The roadmap may include legal measures to allow EU companies to end existing contracts without penalties.
In Gaza, Israeli airstrikes have tragically resulted in the deaths of dozens of civilians, including families seeking refuge in schools and shelters. The international community is expressing deep concern over the escalating humanitarian crisis.
These Palestinians do what they can to put out a blaze, following a deadly Israeli strike on this school sheltering displaced families. Those who witnessed the attack were left shaken. Israel insisted that the attack targeted militants in the complex. Dozens of Palestinians across the enclave were killed in Israeli strikes on Wednesday, according to medics on the ground. As basic supplies grow ever scarcer in Gaza, the foreign ministers of Germany, France and Britain have urged Israel to allow the unhampered passage of aid into the enclave. They also called for a ceasefire and for Hamas to release the remaining hostages, a demand echoed by Mahmoud Abbas.
By holding hostages, Hamas has given the criminal occupation excuses to commit its crimes in the Gaza Strip. I'm the one paying the price. Our people are paying the price, not Israel. Have you seen how much the number of dead Palestinians has grown since 2007? We are paying the price every day. Brothers, just hand them over.
Since a truce lasting several weeks collapsed mid-March, Israeli attacks have claimed the lives of more than 1,600 Palestinians, according to the territory's health ministry.
The Democratic Republic of Congo and M23 rebels backed by Rwanda commit to working towards peace following talks in Qatar, raising hopes for an end to the ongoing regional conflicts.
The Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda-backed rebels on Wednesday pledged to work towards peace. Both sides released the same statement following talks in Qatar, raising a glimmer of hope that the latest cycle of violence in Congo's east might ease. The statement said the parties reaffirm their commitment to an immediate cessation of hostilities and described the talks as frank and constructive. However, sources in the two delegations expressed their frustration over the pace of negotiations, and it was unclear when or if another round would take place. In what is a long-running conflict, the M23 group has staged an unprecedented advance since January, seizing eastern Congo's two largest cities. Thousands have died in the violence and millions displaced. Congo says Rwanda is backing the M23 with troops and arms, a position supported by the United Nations and Western governments. Rwanda denies the allegations and says its forces are acting in self-defense. Sources from both sides of the talk said potential confidence-building measures, such as the release of Congo-held prisoners with links to Rwanda or M23, had inflamed tensions and nearly derailed the outcome. A Congo government source said that M23 was asking for too much. A source from the rebel coalition that includes the M23 said the parties had left Doha when disagreements over the confidence-building measures became an insurmountable obstacle to substantive talks. Nevertheless, diplomats briefed on the negotiations said Qatar did manage to pressure the two sides into releasing the joint statement agreeing to continue to work on a truce. Something that Belgium's Foreign Affairs Minister described on social media as a crucial step towards ending the violence.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news right after this. Welcome back. A new study finds that bonobos use vocal sequences with compositional structure, indicating that these primates possess communication skills more akin to human language than previously understood.
Researchers from the University of Zurich analysed the apes' calls at the Koko-Leporti Bonobo Reserve in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And what they found, the report says, is that bonobos use compositional language, combining individual calls into complex sequences. Simon Townsend is a professor of evolutionary anthropology at the University of Zurich.
So what we've been doing is looking to see whether this striking feature of human language, where we can take meaningful words and combine them together into larger meaningful structures where the meaning of the whole is related to the meaning of the parts. We've been looking to see whether our closest living relatives, the great apes, and particularly bonobos, are capable of doing something similar.
Primatology researcher Melissa Berthet lived among the bonobos for 8 months to record their chatter.
What we found is that for those 7 vocalizations, they mostly communicate about coordination. And that is, I think, quite a nice result. It's all about staying together, coordinating activities, making sure we reunite at the end of the day, because bonobos live in a fission-fusion society where, during the day they will split and reunite again and split again and so on, just like humans when we go to work and meet with friends and see our family and so on. They always change the group of individuals they're with.
China successfully launches the Shenzhou 20 mission, sending 3 astronauts to the Tiangong space station, marking a significant milestone in the nation's expanding space exploration efforts.
China has successfully launched its Shenzhou 20 crewed mission, sending 3 astronauts to the Tiangong space station. This marks the nation's 15th manned space flight. On Thursday at 5:17 p.m. local time, the Shenzhou 20 spacecraft lifted off on a Long March 2F rocket from a satellite launch center in northwest China. Approximately 6.5 hours later, it docked with the Tiangong space station. Mission Commander Chen Dong on his 3rd space flight and first-time astronauts Chen Zhongrui and Wang Jie will spend 6 months on the space station conducting spacewalks and field experiments. They will replace the Shenzhou 19 crew who have been aboard Tiangong for 175 days and are scheduled to return to Earth on April 29th.
In Los Angeles, the family of renowned composer Arnold Schoenberg is striving to rebuild his invaluable archives, which were destroyed in the recent wildfires. The loss includes irreplaceable manuscripts and historical documents.
The LA wildfires destroyed untold billions of dollars in property, but they claimed invaluable cultural treasures too. This lot in the Pacific Palisades used to house a vast archive of music by one of the most influential composers of the 20th century, Arnold Schoenberg, who published his father's work and sold or rented music to orchestras. It included irreplaceable scores, annotated by conductors and performers. His innovation was treating all 12 notes in a scale equally, without a key or a center. It could be jarring and abstract, but it was liberating. It transformed music the way modern artists transformed painting. And the influence is clear in everything from film scores to jazz. Schoenberg was Austrian, and as a prominent Jewish intellectual in 1930s Germany, he fled the year Hitler came to power. eventually landing in Los Angeles. But just as Arnold Schoenberg lost everything and made a new life in LA, his family is finding a new way forward. Larry Schoenberg never made much money as his father's publisher. The goal now is to rebuild the archive digitally, making it resilient and easily accessible to musicians around the world. Keeping the music alive for listeners and players of the next generation and beyond.
Well, that's a wrap from all of us here at World News Tonight. Up next, Prashansa Gunawardene is standing by for the Nightly Business Report. I'm Yasiru Vitane, and we'll leave you now with the visuals from Moscow, where a Japanese artist showcases Orthodox icons she painted, blending Eastern styles with Christian tradition. Thank you for watching. Have a great night.